You know that feeling when you look at someone living the exact life you want, and you just can't help but wonder, what on earth do they know that I don't? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive right into that. We're going to expose the invisible barriers, both the psychological ones and the systemic ones, that are literally keeping most people financially stuck. Think about it. We all grow up hearing this same right path, right? Study hard, get a secure job, buy a house, pay your bills on time. And honestly, it sounds perfectly fair. But what if that very script we've been handed is actually a trap? Because here is the wild part. Every single day, millions of people wake up early. They follow all those rules to a T, and they work incredibly hard their entire lives. Yet 95% of them only ever just survive. They never achieve actual, true financial wealth. Instead, they find themselves stuck in this exhausting rhythm where every single dollar that comes in goes right back out to pay for life. It's not progress. It is literally just survival disguised as stability. And it's a pretty harsh reality to face, honestly. I mean, if hard work alone created wealth, then the absolute hardest working people on earth would all be multimillionaires. But they aren't. And that's because simply trading your time for money comes with a very strict, unforgiving ceiling. Look, no matter how incredibly dedicated you are, there are only 24 hours in a day. The second your income depends entirely on your physical presence, your earning potential is instantly capped. Okay, let's get into section 1, the 95% illusion and this whole societal blueprint. That societal blueprint we've all been sold? It is incredibly effective. Just not at making you free. It's effective at keeping you predictable. It's fundamentally designed to create good employees who fulfill quotas, not financially independent thinkers. And this creates a massive divide in mindset. The 95% focus entirely on earning money. They're asking things like, how can I work more hours? Or how can I get a raise? But the 5%? They focus on owning assets. They're asking, how can I build a system that works for me while I'm sleeping? They create businesses, they buy real estate, they invest in things that generate passive income long after they've clocked out for the day. Which brings us to section 2, the middle-class wealth traps, or what are essentially invisible chains. Because you have to realize, it is rarely these massive, disastrous mistakes that keep people broke. It's the everyday, perfectly socially acceptable choices. There are basically 5 major middle-class traps. First, you've got people confusing stability with progress, getting way too comfortable in a secure job and letting that comfort breed complacency. Second is living for appearances. Third is the credit trap. Fourth is the traditional education flaw, which is great at teaching us to obey orders, but teaches us absolutely zero about managing money. And fifth, the fear of making financial decisions at all, so you just let the system decide your fate for you. Now, that third one, the credit trap, that is especially devastating. Living for appearances has become a modern silent epidemic. People will go out and buy a brand new car on a 36-month financing plan or swipe a credit card for a luxury vacation just to project this image of success. But credit isn't extra money. It is quite literally a debt you are forcing your future self to pay. It creates this incredibly fragile reality. It's basically a theater performance funded by high interest rates, and the second a real emergency hits, the whole thing crumbles. So let's pivot to section 3, the psychology of self-sabotage. Because here's the crazy thing. Even if you logically understand all those traps we just talked about, your own brain might actually be wired to panic right as you approach the finish line. Psychologist Gay Hendricks calls this the upper limit problem. Basically, think of your mind as having a success thermostat. You have this internal set point for exactly how much wealth or happiness you subconsciously believe you actually deserve. When you exceed that temperature, your brain thinks there's an error and unconsciously kicks off self-sabotage to cool things back down to a comfortable, familiar level of struggle. Suddenly, you might create a totally convenient crisis or just become paralyzed by impossible perfectionism out of nowhere. And biologically, this is a real thing known as the 90% phenomenon. When you get incredibly close to a massive positive change, say you're about to launch a business or finally pay off that huge chunk of debt, your nervous system actually experiences an amygdala hijack. It floods your entire body with cortisol. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between, I am about to succeed and change my life forever, and I am in immediate physical danger. It just registers a disruption to the norm, which triggers this huge fight or flight response, making you want to just retreat and give up. So how do you overcome that biological panic? Well, it requires adopting extreme ownership. You have to make this fundamental shift away from a victim mindset, where it's so easy to blame the economy or your boss or how you were raised, and step into a creator mindset.
Extreme ownership means looking in the mirror and realizing that absolutely everything in your financial trajectory is your responsibility. You have to own the failures, you have to own the panic, and ultimately, you own the success.
Moving right along to section 4, earning versus owning and where to actually put your capital. Because once you've conquered the mental game, it really all comes down to where you are directing your capital. Imagine two different people, both get a $10,000 bonus at work. The person on path A immediately upgrades their lifestyle. They go buy a luxury watch, the newest smartphone, maybe book a lavish vacation, and sure, for a few weeks, they feel super rich. But the person on path B, they take that money and invest it into assets, stocks, real estate, or even into acquiring high-income skills. Fast forward 5 years, path A's bonus is completely gone, replaced by obsolete tech and a faded tan. But path B's money? It's been quietly compounding in the background. The average person spends money to look rich today. The wealthy invest their money to stay rich tomorrow. The brilliant financial author Morgan Housel profoundly notes that savings is the gap between your ego and your income. And that is so true. Building wealth is very rarely about your raw intellect or having a genius-level IQ. It is almost entirely about your behavior. It's about frugality. It's about having the self-control to drive a reliable, used car while you're building up your investment portfolio, instead of going deep into debt for a luxury vehicle just to impress people you don't even really like. And how you view the world is going to heavily dictate that behavior. People with a scarcity mindset operate purely on fear. They hoard resources because they believe that if someone else wins, that means they have to lose. But an abundance mindset, as tech leader Deb Blue points out, is all about expanding the circle. It's about intentionally creating win-wins. When you share knowledge, when you help others succeed, and when you collaborate, it organically multiplies your own opportunities. Look at it this way. 20% of a massive growing pie is a whole lot better than 100% of absolutely nothing. All right, let's bring it all together in this final section, your new wealth blueprint for long-term freedom. So how do we take all these mindset shifts and turn them into a concrete blueprint you can use? The very first step, as you can see highlighted here, is that you have to stop the moving goalpost and leave a margin for error. Having this insatiable, never-ending craving for more has ruined so many rich and famous people because that greed eventually pushes you into taking disastrous risks. You need to clearly define what your version of enough is. And just as importantly, you need to protect yourself against bad luck by avoiding single points of failure in your finances. The second step is mastering what is arguably your hidden financial superpower, delayed gratification. It's like the famous Stanford marshmallow test. The kids who are able to just wait 15 minutes to get a second marshmallow ended up having significantly better life outcomes across the board. Well, financial success is exactly the same game. You have to exercise that prefrontal cortex. Being able to delay a small, immediate reward today in favor of a much larger, compounded reward tomorrow is the absolute key to guaranteeing your long-term security. Because the ultimate truth we all have to accept is that wealth just isn't built overnight. It's not some viral moment, and it is definitely not a lottery ticket. True wealth is built over 5, 10, and 20-year horizons. It comes from the quiet, incredibly consistent compounding of small, uncommon decisions over time. Automating your savings, consistently buying assets month after month, and relentlessly continuing to learn new skills. True success always grows quietly in the background, long before it ever grows visibly. So, here we are. You now know the traps. You know exactly why your own brain tries to sabotage you, and you understand the fundamental difference between just earning for your time versus actually owning systems. You are officially no longer ignorant to the rules of this game. So, the big question is, what are you going to do with this information? Remember, choosing not to decide is still making a decision. The system is definitely not going to change itself for you, but you absolutely can change how you operate within it. Will you keep living like the 95%, or are you finally ready to start thinking and acting like the 5%? Your entire future really depends on how you answer that today.